Chapter 2, Supporting the Needs of Families. We know that youth have multiple and varied needs that require a team effort and carefully planned support. However, the assistance must also extend to their families. When family members are struggling to know how to keep their child safe and meet their child's needs, the whole family often experiences trauma.
Our family absolutely experienced trauma. My brother, sister, and I were all young. My brother with the disabilities was the youngest. So we were all 2 years apart. And I remember not understanding a lot of what was going on. My siblings experienced a lot of trauma, especially when behaviors would get aggressive and you're targeted and you don't understand why, and you take it personally and you don't understand kind of how to build that relationship with that person.
I think there's a lot of trauma in the sense that who's prepared to have a child with disabilities. Our family being fortunate with people who are familiar with this population, and it still was traumatic.
In some situations, the family unit is disrupted, and parents and other caregivers find they are simply trying to figure it out day by day. This puts additional stress on families as they work to balance caring for their child with other responsibilities in their lives.
He had to move to Zanesville for 42 days and take care of her all by himself around the clock. And I drove back and forth because I run a business, and we had 2 neighborhood kids that knew her and weren't afraid of her, and they would help us drive her back and forth to Columbus every day. We spend 12 hours a day making sure she gets to school for her education.
There have been a lot of layers of trauma that have really come to play in the entire family's life. And so having that steady support from these professionals is vital to their success as a family, and is vital, quite frankly, to those youth being able to live a full and happy life.
While some families are not faced with such extreme circumstances, they can still feel an enormous amount of stress managing the variety of needs of their child. This often requires them to interact with a range of people, which frequently involves a lot of meetings and planning.
Parents at their core want to be able to help their children and be equipped to navigate the systems that are designed to be helpful. And yet, when a student has multiple needs, that just magnifies the challenge for those parents.
If they're left to themselves, right, they do the best they can. And sometimes that is doing what I can with what resource I can. If I'm a single mother, I only have, chances are, I just have this much bandwidth or capacity, to help. I may or may not know, all of best practice out there. I may not know that there is help out there. And that can be whether, it's mother and father, it's how do you get there? How do you get there and begin to work with them and say, hey, I think we can help in this way?
It was very hard to navigate through the different systems, especially me being a single mother that still needed to work and provide for my family.
I can't imagine what it would be like to have to manage 8 or 9 service plans, budgets, etc. They're confused, they're frustrated, they don't know where to turn.
Kids detect the stresses and the tensions and the frustrations. Other siblings detect those realities. It wears on. If I'm holding down a job in order to support the family while at the same time trying to make appointments and cut through red tape and so forth and so on, it just adds extra burden on top of the realities of caring in the home for that student and his or her particular needs.
It's not easy trying to support a youth with complex needs. Many families report they feel negatively judged by others. Instead, families need to feel that they are being lifted up and supported during both the good and the challenging times.
I think from the outside looking in, not knowing what that family is living, it's so easy to put the blame on parents or environment. So easy to say, well, that child would probably be typical if, and that's not the case. The family doesn't get a break. We clock out at the end of the day. The family, they're there 24/7. They don't get to take a breath from it.
So how are we helping the family learn how to do things a little differently without saying you're doing it wrong? Because that's not what we want to tell them. They haven't done it wrong, but they just need new information.
I had the fortune of working with youth and families who were multi-system involved in a resiliency leadership group. And we interviewed the youth and family, and we asked them what it took for them to be resilient. And we had some really wonderful responses. You know, the parents were really clear that don't come in to our home and judge us, right? We're doing the best we can in a very difficult situation. How can you help us is really the question.
The impact on families of multi-system youth is great. Although it may seem different or greater for some, every family needs some level of support. In order to identify those essential supports, we must first recognize the impact and then identify the resulting needs. Sometimes these needs begin with access to critical information.
Parents are reaching out, asking for help because maybe they are trying their best to support their child, but they just need additional resources and help to do so.
We found along the way there's a lot of other families we've come across who really have no idea what options are out there or even understanding how to ask for things. So they try to do a lot on their own, and my sister was one of them, trying to do a lot on her own as a single mom.
The families, they're not prepared for this when it's dropped in their lap. They don't have the education like a lot of the professionals do, and we need to do a better job of taking that to them before it gets to a crisis situation.
Every family needs to know what's available, because I think a lot of the families think that I'm on my own, nobody understands, nobody cares. There is a lot of help out there. And we've always had a team of experts to help us. You're not alone in it. It's just a matter of contacting your DD board and actually, asking for help.
So what are the supports that families need? Every situation is unique, but crucial supports often include respite and in-home assistance.
Respite support is a huge issue here in the state of Ohio. There just simply aren't enough providers out there, and that's become a huge need for our families across the state. And so when you're talking about certain services, either the state or local entities are able to put in place to make sure that families are able to stay together, that youth are able to stay in their home, respite is absolutely at the top of that list.
The family who's trying to keep their child at home, in their own home, they should be supported, and we should provide resources to them and education for them. It can be a huge loss and abandonment issue for a child who is removed from a home or moves from home to home to home.
The grandparents were getting tired and more tired, but they also don't want to ever give up on their grandchildren. So what we realized was all that grandparent wanted and needed wasn't this out-of-home placement, wasn't this, major system of wraparound services. They just needed a little respite, a little break. She just wanted to go to church. She just wanted to go have dinner with her friends occasionally. That's all it was. And we started putting that into place, and things are stable.
Many times families will let me know they still need somebody to take care of this child while I do my other kids or while I go to work. I can't hold a job because I have this child who can't go to after-school care like the rest of my kids can go.
I stayed at jobs that I probably didn't want to stay at because they work with my schedule. And sometimes I needed somebody to come over just to watch him while I wash up to go to work, just to be able to get to work, to get him to back and forth to school.
Not only do families need understanding and assistance with supporting their child, they also need to remain linked to their team, including the direct support professionals. They need ongoing supportive communication and connection to avoid misunderstandings and mistakes.
Communicating with the family is very critical. For instance, Jessica's been at a new facility since June, but they'll call us and they'll say, well, she's really upset, She's been upset for hours, we don't know what's wrong. And we're like, okay, well, what's she doing? Well, she's hitting her head. Okay, she has a headache. Ask her if she has a headache. She'll say, yes, like I've been trying to tell you.
I think the worst part is that the office would tell you one, the staff would tell you something different. Jesse signed something totally different. So, who do you pick? You got to pick your kid.
The relationship between the DSP, direct support professional, and the family is probably one of the most important things to the success of any setting. Obviously, there has to be trust between the two of them and respect. They have to listen to one another as far as what's going on, what they've observed, and there has to be great communication.
And the basic thing is those supports have to be there for the parents or the caregivers, whether it's parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles, whoever's raising them, has to. You can't do it by yourself, it's just too hard.
And we just, as a system, need to listen differently to what these families are telling us.